Hi, welcome to Watkins Nature Center. My name is Amanda Abrams and I'm the facility director here. We're excited to have you meet some of our animal ambassadors that live here at the Nature Center and have a naturalist give you a tour of our center as well. Come on, let's see what we have.
Hi, my name is Morgan McGinnity and I am a park naturalist with Watkins Nature Center. Today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the animals that are going to live in the habitats around where you would find these sunfish. So in all of these areas, these animals live, so all these guys are native to Maryland. What I mean by native is that they occur here naturally. So we're actually going to break them up into the groups that scientists break them up into. So scientists group animals based on two things. They do that based on the things that they do and the things that they have on their bodies. So their behaviors and their adaptations. And the first group we're going to look at today are our arthropods. So arthropods are a group of invertebrates. An invertebrate means that they have no bones. But they do have a hard shell on the outside known as an exoskeleton. Now this little guy likes to curl into a spiral as a defense. So we're going to see if we can't get him to wake up and move for us. He's kind of sleepy. I just took him out this morning. This is what's known as a giant American millipede. Now millipedes are different than centipedes. Well, what do I mean by different? A couple of things. So first off, millipedes have 2 sets of legs per body segment. So they actually have 4 legs per each one of these little stripes. Centipedes only have 1 set of legs per body segment, so they only have 2 legs per each one of these little stripes. Centipedes are also flatter and they're much faster. Whereas you can see these guys are a little bit more rounded. And the biggest difference is actually behind what they eat. So, oh, there you go, little friend. Millipedes are decomposers, they're detrivores. What that means is they eat all of the dead leaves and fruit and even dead animals that are on the forest floor. So they act like nature's garbage men. So they help keep things clean and they help recycle all those nutrients back into the earth. Whereas centipedes are carnivores. They eat almost primarily meat. And they are venomous. They actually have a venomous bite, and that is one of the ways that they can take down their prey. Whereas millipedes technically are poisonous. And I do say that there is a difference between venom and poison. So venom must be injected, you must be stabbed. So bees are venomous, spiders are venomous, snakes are venomous. Poisonous means you must eat it or it must otherwise get into your bloodstream. So millipedes are poisonous, toads are poisonous, mushrooms are poisonous. So that is the big difference between poison and venom. So these guys actually have a poison that is very mild. It's actually iodine based. And if you eat them, they just kind of taste really gnarly and most animals will spit them back out again. And you can find these guys under logs and stones outside. This is actually a relatively big one, but they can get about this big. So that is one of our native invertebrates. Again, that means an animal that has no bones, and as far as an arthropod means they have segmented bodies and segmented legs. That is different than an insect, which has 3 body parts, a head, abdomen, and thorax, and always 6 legs. So these guys are not considered insects because they most definitely have more than 6 legs. So we are going to move on to our next group of animals that lives around here, and we are going to talk about our reptiles. So what makes a reptile a reptile? Well, first, it is their dry, scaly skin. So reptiles are not slimy. That is your amphibians. If you find a slimy reptile, there is something wrong with it. They also lay eggs, but their eggs are a little bit different. If you kind of feel your shoes, they kind of feel kind of rubbery, kind of bendy. That is what a reptile egg is like. It is bendable, it's movable. That's very different from bird eggs, which have a hard set shell like a chicken egg you can find in your fridge. They also breathe air, they have lungs, so even your reptiles that live in the water, like turtles, do have to come up to breathe. And they are cold-blooded. Well, what do I mean by cold-blooded? Does that mean they are cold all the time? No, it does not. What it means is when they eat, they don't make as much heat. So as warm-blooded creatures like us, when we eat, we need to eat every day. And when we eat, we make energy. And when we make energy, we make heat. So we have a constant body temperature. But things like reptiles, they don't need to eat every day. In fact, they can go months without eating. So they don't make as much energy. And thus, they don't make as much heat. They do make some, but not to fight the air around them. So if they start to get too cold, they need to move into the sun to warm up. And if they start to get too hot, because reptiles can still get too hot, they need to move into the shade to cool down. And that is how they regulate their body temperatures. Now, one more thing about reptiles is they do have bones, and I do mean all of them. In fact, I bring that up because this next creature here, a lot of people think don't have bones, but he certainly does. I know, buddy. So this is what's known as an eastern rat snake, and they are one of the most common snakes in the area. And as you can guess by the name, they do eat rats, although that is not their only diet. In fact, these guys are pretty excellent at climbing trees, and one of their favorite foods is eggs. They love eggs. Farmers will often actually find them in their chicken coops. They're not there to eat the chickens, they're there to eat the eggs. Now, as I said before I pulled him out, he does in fact have bones. If you look, this is a snake skeleton, and it looks pretty much like a centipede, but it's actually just a backbone with a lot of ribs. And that's pretty much all snakes are. They have a skull, they have a backbone and ribs, and they have a tail. Actually, where their ribs end is where a snake's tail starts. So their entire body is not a tail. They actually do have one. The rest of them is a body, and it has all of the same things in it that you do. It has a heart, it has lungs, it has a stomach. They're just all spread out really thinly. Now, he does not have eyelids. He cannot close his eyes. So when he sleeps like this. And you're never actually sure if they're sleeping. You kind of got to poke them to make sure they're awake. Now, you'll also notice that he keeps sticking out his tongue. But if you listen really closely, you will not hear him hissing, because snakes do not always hiss. We see that in cartoons, but that's not always true. Snakes hiss when they are angry or afraid. He's not hissing, so he is not angry or afraid. But they do constantly stick out their tongue because that is how they smell. And if you look really closely, you'll see his tongue is in a V shape, and that lets him smell in different directions. So he can actually figure out where danger or food is and what direction it is. And he does that by rubbing his tongue on the roof of his mouth. That is how he processes it. Now, people ask me all the time, can he bite? Well, yes. Anything with a mouth can bite. But will he bite is the question. And wild animals bite when they are angry or afraid. We've already determined he's not, so he's not going to bite. Now, there are two kinds of snakes in the world. There are your Your venomous snakes and your constrictors, and we already talked a little bit about venom, but what constrictors do, like him, is they wrap around what they're gonna do, what they wanna eat, squeeze it till it stops moving, and then swallow it whole. So snakes do have teeth, but they do not take bites of food and they do not chew their food. So if they can't swallow it whole, they cannot eat it. So he will eat something about this big around and about this long. And again, they can go up to 6 months without eating. Here at the Nature Center, he eats about every 3 weeks. And that's actually pretty frequently for a snake. So now we're going to look at another native reptile that is a little bit different than a snake.
Hi, I'm Ms. Paula, one of the naturalists at Watkins Nature Center, and I'm here to continue with a few animals for you to meet. In with our reptiles, we have some special creatures that live in the woods. This is a woodland creature we have here, and there are a lot of things people think they know about this little creature that they might not really know, but this is a box turtle. They're called a box turtle because, do they live in a box? No, but they live in a shell. Is it like a regular shell? Like a shell you find at the seashore? No, it's actually made of bone. So if you take a look at what the shell looks like underneath, the scutes, we love saying scutes. Scutes are the camouflage, actually scales that are on top of the bone. So if you look at a shell on the inside, you can really see the different bones of the turtle. The bones, they have a spine down the middle, and their ribs are modified into this shell. Well, box turtles are the only turtle that can totally close up in their shell. Now, I could put her down on this table, but she's not going to close up. She wants to wander about, and we won't let her go off the table, so I'll hold her for a few more minutes so you can see her legs moving. She has very sharp claws, and she has a hinge on the bottom. I'm going to tilt her just a little bit so you can see the bottom of her shell where there's a hinge. And you can see it's a her. Now, a lot of people think, oh, you can look at their eyes and tell if it's a male or a female. No, can't tell by the eyes. They have different color eyes, but you can't tell by that. They do some of them have red eyes, some of them have yellow eyes or brown eyes. And what I was saying is that at the very bottom, she's very smooth. That's how you tell she's a girl. If she had a little dent in there, my thumb would kind of disappear, and that would be a boy box turtle, but only in the box turtles. Now, she looks like she's swimming. Box turtles don't swim. Box turtles like to be in the forest and on the forest floor, and that hinge that I showed you about before can close the door. They're the only one with doors. They have a front door and a back door where they can totally close up. Now, box turtles love to eat things on the forest floor, like earthworms and beetles and insects, and they also eat a lot of things you might eat. They eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, and they love red things. They love strawberries and tomatoes, which is a great time right now. And since they're reptiles, all those things that they eat growing in the summertime and in the warm times, reptiles are able to get around and get those good yummy things. But in the wintertime, you don't see them because being reptiles, they have that cold blood. Now, what does it mean to be cold-blooded? Not cold, not mean and nasty, but again, they have the air that is around them is the same temperature on the inside of their bodies. So they're the same temperature as the air around them. So when it's cold, they're cold, and they don't move very fast. They're very slow. When it's hot, they can move around, and that's when they can get that food. So what do reptiles do in the winter? They hibernate. These guys will dig down under the ground, or they'll dig into the bottom of maybe a big tree that's rotting away, and there are a bunch of leaves and stuff, and they get in there, get inside their shell, and they don't have to eat for the whole winter. They don't eat, they don't go to the bathroom, and they hibernate. So in the springtime, when all those fruits and vegetables are growing, and they can get out there and eat the clover and the new leaves that are out there, they can eat those strawberries, then they come out in the spring. Awesome. I also said that they are moving around like they swim, but they don't swim in the water. They're very heavy, they would sink to the bottom, and they would drown. So if you ever find a box turtle, when would we find a box turtle? If they're in the woods. Well, sometimes they come out of the woods. Sometimes they go across the roads. Oh my gosh, I oftentimes have to put on my turtle cape and say, go save the turtles crossing the road. We want to save them from the road and help them get across the road. But if you're trying to save them, make sure that you're in a safe place, that your parents can pull over and help you out and make sure that it's safe. But if it's safe for them, or safe for you to help them, you can help them across the road in the direction that they're going. Because box turtles only live in a 1 mile radius. That means if this turtle was born in Watkins Park, it would stay in Watkins Park its whole life. And if somebody came and took it out of the park, it's going to spend its whole life trying to get back there because it's programmed in its head where it needs to be. And if they're crossing the road, they might be crossing to get to the other side where they can lay eggs. And that's oftentimes the way. All right, so watch out for our little box turtles. All right. Next, I have an awesome ambassador to show you. I'm going to give you a couple of clues. Now, we have things at the Nature Center that people don't have laying around, and we don't kill animals to share these things with you, like I showed you the shell of the box turtle, but we have things that we find, or if something gets hit by a car or something happens, then we save the real parts. So what I have are real parts from an animal that back in the day got its name from some dinosaurs, one of my favorite dinosaurs, Velociraptor. Might have something to do with having knives and forks on their feet. Those knives and forks are called talons. And so when an animal has talons like that, you're going to be very careful at how you handle them. Now I'm going to put on the big heavy glove so I can stay safe, and we're going to get to show you a very cool raptor. So I showed you the talons on this foot that came from a roadkill, and that is sometimes how birds like this end up at a nature center because they get injured. They're out there hunting, and when they're hunting, they have a one-track mind. They're finding food, and so they have very special eyes to see all these great things. Now let me tell you a little bit about this one. This is a red-tailed hawk. You see that beautiful red tail there? And she also has some stripes on her chest and a little thing called a belly band. That's what they call a belly band. You can see red-tailed hawks in the area if you're looking and you know where to look. A lot of times if you're riding in the car, you can see them on the light posts as your parents are driving around, even on the beltway, or they sit up at the tops of trees and look over fields. Now they love to eat rats and mice, and if you look at a red-tailed hawk foot, that is a foot for eating mammals. They used to be known as the chicken hawk. They'd fly around the farmers' fields and looking for mice and rats, but the farmers would think, oh no, they're gonna come and eat my chickens. So they used to get shot. Oh my goodness. Well, more education, less people doing that now. And then some of when they're hunting, sometimes birds of prey will end up getting hit by cars. Why did they get hit by cars? Well, it's because of what people do. Sometimes people throw things out of the window when they're driving the car, and that's not a good thing. You throw anything out of the window, even an apple core, and a rat or a mouse is going to come to the side of the road. Other animals come to the side of the road and get hit by cars sometimes. And so these guys will still keep hunting. They don't see the cars. They don't pay attention to cars. They're going out for that rat or mouse and whack, sometimes get hit by the cars. So sometimes they get head injuries. This one had a head injury, and so she gets a little wonky when it's a storm coming. And so that's why she's not out in the wild. She lives here at Watkins. But now, red-tailed hawks are your most common hawk. You'll see them all the way from Maine to Florida, California to Washington State, all across the United States and all across North America. You can find red-tailed hawks. They're one of those awesome creatures. And using those big, giant, sharp talons and that sharp, hooked beak make them raptors. And raptors are amongst the coolest birds. Well, what makes birds birds? Feathers, having feathers. So that makes them different. And they are warm-blooded, so they are hunting all year round and looking for food all year round. They don't have to hibernate like we talked about with the reptiles. Awesome. Show you her beautiful red tail one more time. Now, they do make a very interesting call. As I think about the things that I brought to share with you guys, I have a secret to let you in on, all right? You will know this now when you're watching movies and TV shows and even on commercials. They will use the red-tailed hawk call when they show you another bird. Our national bird, the bald eagle. Hollywood does not want you to know that the bald eagle has a very chirpy kind of sound. But the red-tailed hawk, you can hear it's a very cool sound. Let me see if this one will do it. I can do it, but we'll see if we got it on here. Our red tail. I bet you've heard that before. And that's the call that is beautiful perfect for that red tail as they're flying across looking for rats and mice. Not for our eagles. The bald eagles have a much more chirpy sound, kind of sound. And I guess Hollywood decided that was a wimpy sound. We don't want to be using that when we show our beautiful bald eagles. But now you know, it's really the red tail. All right.
Welcome to Watkins Nature Center. So we wanted to give you a brief tour of the Nature Center, and we actually have it split into the areas of the world, and we have 3 main sections. So the first section over here is Africa. Then back there, we have Australia and New Zealand. And then finally, we're going to end with the Americas. So let's go ahead and get started over here in Africa. So it's going to be a little hard to see this. This is our Kenyan sand boa, and as you can see by the name, they are from Kenya, and they actually spend most of their time under the sand, and they actually will grab their prey from under the sand and pull it down under with them. Over here we have the emperor scorpion, which is one of the largest species of scorpions in the world. And they live in the rainforests of Africa, and they actually glow green under black light. Over here we have our Madagascar hissing cockroaches, and again, as you can see by the name, they are from the island of Madagascar, which is off the coast of Africa, and they live in the rainforest there, and they get their name because when they are frightened or angry, they actually will hiss to intimidate other animals, making them think they are a snake. And speaking of snakes, over here we have 2 of our largest snakes in the center. These are our ball pythons, also known as royal pythons. And they get that name because they actually, when they get afraid, will curl up into a ball and put their head in the middle as a form of protection. And you can find these guys in the grasslands and forests of Western Africa. So let's move on to our next area. So this is our New Zealand and Australia area, and actually both of these guys are types of lizard. And we're going to start over here with the crested gecko. And these guys live in the rainforest, and a really cool fact about them is until the late 90s, scientists actually thought they were extinct. They could not find them in the wild. And then suddenly a research group walked into the forest and found hundreds of them in one area. So actually now their population has bounced back exponentially. And then these guys are actually what's known as blue-tongued skinks. So this is an Indonesian blue-tongued skink. There are actually several different species. And they get that name because they actually do have a bright blue tongue. Because in the animal kingdom, bright blue is generally a sign that something is venomous or poisonous. But these guys are not. They are just bluffing. They are pretending so that other animals will leave them alone. So So this is one of the most beneficial snakes in North America. This is what's known as an eastern king snake, and any snake that has king in the name actually means that it eats other snakes. And in fact, these guys can eat venomous snakes. They are immune to the bites of other snakes, so they can get bit but still actually eat the venomous snakes in the areas. So these are one of your protectors against the venomous snakes that live here in Maryland. Now these snakes here are actually both eastern rat snakes, and much like we talked about with the American toads in your reptiles, your boys are actually smaller than your girls as well. And part of the reason for that is because the girls have to lay their eggs. And one of the ways they do that is they all will come together in the spring, because over the winter, they're actually hibernating. They will sleep through the winter, and they will sleep in a big cluster of snakes, thousands and thousands of snakes, known as a hibernaculum. And when they come out in the spring, they're all together, all ready to lay their eggs. Now this is a truly fascinating type of snake known as a corn snake, and they get that name actually from two different reasons. One, you're going to find them frequenting the cornfields because they are eating the mice that are eating the corn. But also their underside actually looks like an ear of maize. It is very speckled and looks like rows of corn. This is a type of aquatic turtle known as a painted turtle, and they are called that because the underside of their shell and the side of their face is actually beautifully colored compared to some of the sliders, which only have one or two colors on their shell. Now, unlike most of the animals we talked about in the Americas, these neck guys are actually from South America, and specifically these guys are from the mountain deserts of Chile. These are what's known as Chilean rose hair tarantulas. Now they do have these rose hairs covering their bodies. It's not true hair, and when they get scared they can actually flick those hairs off at you, and it sticks into your skin and it feels like fiberglass. It's very itchy, and that is one of the ways that they protect themselves. Another guy that you're not going to be able to find in North America, or in Maryland's area of North America, is the California king snake. And again, based off the name, you can tell that he is from California. Now this one is an albino king snake, and what that means is that it has no pigments in its skin. So one of these guys would actually normally be black and white in color, but this one actually ends up being white and cream with bright red eyes. And much like the king snake here in Maryland, just because it has king in the name, it does eat other snakes. It eats venomous snakes. It just eats the venomous snakes of California. So welcome to the North America part of Watkins Nature Center. Now all of these guys can be found in North America, and in fact most of them can be found right in your own backyard, including these ladies right here. These are what's known as American toads, and they can be found all up and down the east coast of America. And in your toads, your girls are actually bigger than your boys. So these are actually girl American toads. The boys would be about half that size. Moving on, we can see the green anole, and these are actually really big in the pet trade as a very small lizard, and you can find them in the southeastern United States. They really like the kind of wetter, warmer climates of the United States, and they have a really big population in Florida, and they serve a very important purpose of eating lots and lots of insects. Now in this tank, we actually have several species of amphibian. So we actually have two different types of tree frog, the green and gray tree frog, and these are both native to the state of Maryland. A lot of people think of tree frogs as being animals that you can find in the rainforest, but in fact, We actually have several species of tree frog here in Maryland, and after a rainstorm, you've probably heard them singing. They kind of even sometimes sound like crickets. And over here, we have American newts, which are actually types of salamander. And they spend their entire lives in the water, and their tail is shaped like a paddle to help them swim through the water.
So when you come and see North America as part of Watkins, you may see this beautiful bird. Now you're going to have to look because she likes to be up high, as most birds do. And she's a hunter. She's another raptor. And she's called an American kestrel. Now our American kestrel, and I keep saying she's one of the few birds of prey that look different if you're a male or a female. The males have a lot more blue, and they're smaller, but the females, they have a lot more cryptic coloring. Cryptic meaning more camouflaged, and they have more browns. She'll have more colors of brown, and she's also bigger than a male. But she's not a very big bird. So as you look up, she's up there in the corner. She'll be sitting on one of her perches, checking you out. Kestrels are skilled hunters. They're very fast flyers. So they are related to peregrine falcons. You've heard of the peregrine falcon, the fastest flyer, and they can reach very high speeds, 55 miles an hour at least, at a high velocity as they're coming down in a stoop. That's when they close their wings and fly down. Now she gets her food brought to her every day, and so she doesn't have to fly and catch it, but she does have very sharp talons on her feet. She's been with us for a very long time, our kestrel falcon, and if you see kestrels out in the wild, it's kind of rare now, but they used to have a lot more. They eat a lot of insects, and they eat also little birds, and they eat mice, love little mice. Now, one cool fact about the American kestrel and how they find those mice in a field. Now picture, you've got a field of grasses and you're looking for a little tiny mouse. Those little tiny mice can't hold their pee. Oh my gosh, they don't really have a functioning bladder, no bladder control anyway. So what they do is they make trails of pee. Those urine trails are found by kestrel falcons because of their vision. They have a special way of looking. They can see ultraviolet light that's given off of that urine. Very cool. All right, well, come with me. We're going to go through the woods. We've got a big giant tree over here, and we're going to go take a look at our woodland creatures. Another raptor friend, or a couple of raptor friends. We have two of our screech owls here. Screech owls got their name because of their very high-pitched little whinny sound. Another little sound that doesn't really sound like a screech, sometimes a screaming kind of sound, but they have a kind of haunting sound. Now, will you hear it during the day when you're here? Probably not. But if you're ever here for a nighttime program, sometimes we have campfires, and if you're here for a nighttime program, you might hear that little call. They're tiny little guys, another one to be able to come here and really look into our cages, look into the woods, and you might see them. They're over there sitting on top of a little perch. Both of them are females. They're big, beefy. But when I say big and beefy, it means they're about 6 to 8 inches tall. They have little tuft feathers on their heads. Those aren't their ears. They have very powerful ears. But with owls, their ears are, one is higher up, one is lower down, and that way they can pinpoint the sounds to find mice that they eat. They also eat little birds, and they eat insects. Similar diet to that kestrel that we met before, but knowing these guys are out at nighttime, they can hunt at different times so they don't compete with each other. Now these guys both have an injury. They all of our birds have an injury. These are missing one eye. So when you get to come see them, or if you see them up close, you can see that they're missing an eye. How would that happen? That's an injury that usually happens when they get hit by cars. And you can help out. I love giving you guys a choice, something that you can do to help out wildlife. And one thing, it's real easy, never throw anything out of a car. If you throw something out of the car window, trash, food, anything out of the car window, brings other animals close to the road. And these guys, when they're hunting, they aren't thinking about cars. They don't know about cars. They just see that, what is that on the side of the road? Maybe a little mouse has come over to check out your trash, and they see that mouse and they say, ooh, great food for me. I'm just gonna go catch it, my powerful talents. And they don't see the cars, whack, get hit in the head. And owls, most of their head is made up of eyes. Their eyes are so big in their head, they can't even move their eyes like we can. You can move your eyes. If you want to look up at the ceiling, you don't have to move your head. You can try it with me. You look up to the ceiling, you look down to the floor, you look over to the window, over to the door, and move them all the way around in a circle. You can do that. Owls can't do that. Their eyes are so big, they're attached to their skulls. So they have to move their head. And you've heard the story, right? They can spin their head all the way around, right? Nope, doesn't work that way. They can spin their head at least, well, we've heard more than 270 degrees. So it's not like your Xbox 360, but they can go quite a ways because they have a lot more bones in their neck. Yep. So owls are pretty amazing. And remember, don't throw anything out of the window. So come with me, we're staying in the Americas because these birds are found in all the countries, but what we want to show you is our fish crow and an American crow. We have two different kinds of crows in this area, and if you want to know the difference, well, maybe you see a crow out there, and you look up at that crow and you say, are you an American crow? And he goes, uh-uh. Well, he says, uh-uh, because that's what fish crows say. It would be a fish crow. Now, fish crows are a little bit smaller. He's over here behind my head. How cool is that? And they're very curious creatures. That's how they get injured. They get a little too close to cars sometimes because they're trying to get food. They eat a multitude of things, but they really love, well, when we feed them fruits and vegetables and protein, and they love their protein. Their protein would be dead mice, dead chicks, and sometimes they get insects, not so dead. We give them crickets sometimes and worms that are wiggling around so that they can find them, and we put them in a container so that they have at least some dirt to filter through and find their food. Crows are very curious. They like shiny things, and they love to check things out. Now, fish crows also say a lot of different things. Now, he was injured before he was with us, of course, but before he was with a lot of crows of his kind. So this guy, he doesn't know that he's a fish crow, of course, and he says all kinds of things. Sometimes he says, hello, and sometimes it sounds like he's actually mimicking things that he's heard at the nature center, like mommy. That was very scary hearing it the first time. We thought somebody left someone behind. And sometimes he says, my favorite thing that he says is caw-caw. Because people think of the crows say caw, caw. And our crow in the background, the American crow, is a little bit bigger, and he does say caw-caw, caw, caw. And he says, well, he doesn't say much of anything else. He's usually very happy when they're all together, because crows are social. They like to be together. And this is a tough time for them, because they love to see people. So when you come to visit, definitely come see the crows. All right? All right, so while we're in the Americas, I want to take you over and let us see the wood turtle. The wood turtle over here is a little more, I won't say exotic, he's a little more endangered of our guys, a rarer animal that you would see in this area. This is the farthest south that wood turtles come, as far as the DC area, but normally they're more northern on the East Coast. And they're a turtle that you find in the woodlands and wetlands. And the wetland areas, they love to be in the water, and he has his own little pond over here, but they also love to be on the land. And our little wood turtle eats all kinds of, loves to eat fish when he's in the water, and when he's on the land, we'll eat insects and fruits and vegetables. So he's really cool. And if we walk over in this direction, I want you to see our state reptile. And if you haven't figured out our state reptile before, or know about it. Maybe you might think about the University of Maryland. University of Maryland, go Terps. When they say go Terps, we're talking about our terrapin. This is our Maryland terrapin, and you can see her beautiful spotted skin there. She's watching me. She's been here a long time. She had an injury where she might have gotten chomped by maybe a snapping turtle. Will eat other little turtles, and but she survived and has lived here. Is very personable, our little terrapin. They have very soft skin, and they live in brackish water. So that means they have a little bit of salt and a little bit of fresh water mixed together, make brackish water, like the Chesapeake Bay, the largest bay in all of North America. So she is a very great ambassador for our center as well as for Maryland, the Maryland terrapin. Uh-oh. All right. So the raptor mews are part of the park here at Watkins Park and part of the Nature Center of our Americas exhibits. And this is where the red tails that we may have looked at earlier, this is where both red tails live, in these big giant mews. And they call them mews, like the news. That's a set of cages that house the raptors. And we have the Harris's hawk over here. This is one of the birds that you would find out west. We have it here because it used to be a falconer's bird, but it got injured in its eye. It's blind in one eye. And the reason that they may sometimes be hard to see in the cages is because we have to protect the birds not only from outdoor predators, but also from people sometimes. We have the caging is set up so people can appreciate the birds without hurting them with rocks or sticks or anything. So they have a bit of protection. But with the Harris's hawks, they're one of the hawks actually that hunt like wolves. They hunt in packs like wolves, and they'll actually be hunting out in the desert where all they have are those big saguaro cacti that stand out there instead of trees. They stand on top of the cacti. It's hard to say that, that's more than one cactus. But the cacti, they'll stand on top of it, and then if it's not quite tall enough, they do something called stacking, where they'll stand on each other so that they can really survey, and they're out there hunting jackrabbits. Jackrabbits are pretty tall, pretty big, and so they hunt in packs so that they can get enough food for all the pack. And if we come on down the way, we are nighttime hunters. Nighttime hunters are our barred owl exhibit here, and the barred owls are the kind of owl that you would find in the wetlands. They have a wide diet, and they eat a variety of a whole bunch of different animals that you'd find in the wetlands. They love snakes, and they'll eat fish and little birds and mammals, even muskrat if they can get them, and little baby ones. All kinds of good stuff out there for the wetlands, in the wetlands for the barred owls. We also have a black vulture over here. And if we go all the way down the way, you can see our raven. A lot of people like to come visit the raven. He sometimes gets chatty and will talk, and he says all kinds of different things. Not real words yet, but it has been reported that he says, "That's all I have," because really, that's all I have. I hope you guys enjoyed the wonderful tour you've gotten of the Nature Center, and come visit us at Watkins. Thank you.